Recently, you may have seen this headline in the news talking about how Tarion has estimated they'll be paying out $90 million this year in coverage for lost deposits on new build homes as waves of builders in Ontario are abandoning projects and entering bankruptcy. This is an enormous increase from a typical annual total of well under $2 million. The story also mentions that despite this coverage provided by Tarion, homebuyers who are affected by these abandoned projects may still lose a significant portion of their deposits. But you're probably wondering, what the heck is Tarion? Tarion is the organization responsible for administering Ontario's new home warranty program. This includes problems with new homes still under warranty by the builder, dispute resolution, and in this case, providing some coverage of funds deposited on new build homes in the event that the builder fails to complete the project. They also used to be responsible for licensing builders in the province of Ontario until those responsibilities were spun off into a new entity called the Home Construction Regulatory Authority, or HCRA. But before reading this article, most people probably hadn't even heard of Tarion, including me. I don't know everything, It just looks like I know everything because I do a bunch of research before I write the videos, okay? Anyway, to find out more about Tarion and the HCRA, and to find out why homebuyers in Ontario could still be at risk of losing large amounts of their deposit money despite the existence of these two organizations, I had a chat with Barbara Captijn, a consumer advocate who's been studying this issue and advocating for consumer protections for Ontario homebuyers for the past 15 years. There will be a condensed version of this interview in the Friday update this week, but the full interview is a deeper dive into this story, including the history of this growing problem and how we've managed to ignore it for so long. Enjoy! So the first question I wanted to ask you was, what is Tarion and what do they do?
Well, Tarion is an administrative authority of the Ontario government. They are an agency which has been delegated by the Ontario government to ostensibly look after consumer protection for new home buyers. Now, a lot of new home buyers won't have heard of this agency, Tarion, nor would they have heard of Tarion's spin-off agency called HCRA, the Home Construction Regulatory Authority. But both of those are agencies delegated by the Ontario government to look after consumer protection for new home buyers. It's only in Ontario, by the way, not other provinces.
The amount of deposit payouts that they're projecting for this year is $90 million, which is much higher than a typical year where they're typically about 1.2 to 1.6 million. What's causing such a huge increase right now?
Well, it's a combination of factors, but the overall big picture that consumers need to know, what is the reason why this is happening now, is a sort of train crash in slow motion. We, as consumer advocates, have been telling the government and telling Tarion and its spin-off agency, HCRA, for over a decade that there are not enough consumer protections in this legislation governing these agencies in order to protect consumers. Furthermore, there's not enough government oversight of these two agencies. So the average new home buyer isn't going to be expected to understand all the intricacies of the legislation governing these two agencies, and they wouldn't be aware of some of the loopholes and gaps in the protections that Tarion provides. And for example, one of them is that if you buy a freehold home that is not a condominium, it could be a townhouse or a freestanding new construction home, your deposit does not have to be held in trust with a lawyer. That is not the law. It's not mandatory. And most consumers wouldn't think, oh, I think I'll ask that that be done. That should be the law. It is required for condo purchases, and there's no reason why it shouldn't apply as well to freehold new home purchases. But there again, that's lack of government oversight. Big industries don't like to be regulated. Doug Ford, our premier, is always saying, I want to cut red tape for builders. But cutting red tape for builders in this case means making consumers the victims of this lack of regulatory oversight. It is just wrong. This never should have happened. And this has been a train crash in slow motion for more than a decade. And legislators have not been listening. Tarion, of course, likes to run its own show with less government oversight. And the industry is happy with less government oversight as well. The only people who are not happy with that are the victims, the home buyers.
So, what do you think could be done? I mean, what are the most important reforms to help better protect consumers from this kind of situation?
Well, there was a review of Tarion done by an independent judge in 2017, and he recommended that Tarion be only one of the players in the field, and that all of the players in the new home warranty field would be regulated as insurance providers and under the Insurance Act. Tarion is a unique animal because it doesn't provide a warranty. It's the builder's warranty, and it is not regulating builders anymore. So it's really sort of a white elephant out there. What is it? What does it do? Does it do enough when it's required to step up to the plate and protect consumers? There's a lot missing. And condominium purchasers would have their deposits protected up to $20,000. I think this is a question you were going to ask earlier. And freehold new home purchasers would have up to $100,000 protected by Tarion, but developers are asking more than that in deposits.
My understanding of the deposit coverage by Tarion is that for freehold homes, it would be 10% of the total purchase price of the home up to $100,000. So it seems like people who have put down more than $100,000 either because the home cost more than $1 million or because their deposit requirement was more than 10% will still be on the hook for some of the difference. They could still lose some of their deposits. So if we're looking at $90 million in payouts from Tarion, there could be, I would assume, tens of millions of dollars hanging in the balance that won't be covered.
Yes, there was an article written about that last year, 2022. A company called Ideal Developments was asking from townhouse purchasers $250,000 as deposit, so well above the 10%. There's no law saying they can only ask 10% as well. That's another area which should be regulated and is not. Developers can ask however much deposit they want. The contracts are written by developers for pre-construction new homes. They're not written by a collaboration between all the parties. They're written by developers and their lawyers. A developer can and did, in that case in 2022, ask for $250,000 deposit on let's say, an $800,000 or $1 million townhome. That's not against the law. And if it's a freehold home, that developer does not have to keep that money in trust with a lawyer, which they would have to do if it were a condo purchase. That's another gap in the legislation. That's where the government should have stepped in long ago and said, okay, we're going to regulate this for the protection of the public. But again, back to my point that this is an area, the new home building industry is an area where builders don't like to be heavily regulated. Uh, and so the consumer is the one who is vulnerable. Government has not stepped in because they want to make sure the building industry is happy. This is just, like I say, a train crash in slow motion. Should never have happened, what we're seeing here. And furthermore, the agency, the spin-off agency from Tarion, created in 2021, called HCRA, or the Home Construction Regulatory Authority, they're supposed to license builders and only license them if they have checked that they have sound financials and have the ability not only to collect deposits from people, but to actually build what they contract to build. And they are also dropping the ball here. Because how can a builder go bankrupt a year after he's got his license renewed by the very agency who's responsible for checking his financial stability in the first place? That's just weird. That is just not what we expect of Ontario's consumer protection regime. It is so full of holes. It's just astonishing that this has been allowed to go on for so long. But it's so complicated, most people don't even know where to start asking the government for better protection and better laws.
Yeah, I really see what you mean about a train wreck in slow motion. And I think we've seen this across many different aspects of the industry is that There are a lot of these problems out there with poor oversight and just poor monitoring of all sorts of things. But when prices are going up rapidly and everyone's making money hand over fist, it doesn't become a problem. But you can see if there's no protections built into the situation, then when things change,
Exactly.
there's no coverage really.
Exactly. And that's when you need somebody to step in to protect the consumer. You know, a business person I used to know said, revenues hide a multitude of sins. When everybody's making money and everybody's happy, nothing much is going to happen. But you have agencies like Tarion and HCRA in the event that there should be a downfall in the market and there should be problems. But also, something also very curious about this whole situation in Ontario is that, I mean, if you're going to practice, if you're going to be a builder, you have to get a license. Otherwise, you have no business putting shovels in the ground and starting to build and taking people's deposits. But builders can do that here in Ontario. They don't need a building permit. They can start to take deposits and they don't even have to be licensed. They're supposed to be. But a lot of the builders, or many of them, are skirting the rules. There are rules in place that say that, you and I can't just tomorrow afternoon start to be builders. We have to get a license and we have to prove our financial stability in order to complete the project. But agencies like HCRA are not being strict enough in clamping down on some of these bad apples who are skirting the laws, not getting their licenses. And second of all, Tarion is supposed to be ensuring that builders, when they take your deposit for a pre-construction home, they're supposed to enroll that home with Tarion. It's a process called qualification for enrollment, QFE. And there are a lot of builders out there who are skirting that law as well. So why do we have builders out there skirting the laws which are already on the books? How's that happening? I mean, how many doctors or engineers are there out there who are practicing the profession without being licensed? I'd say very few, because the regulatory bodies which control them and regulate them are doing their jobs. Why for decades and decades, are there builders out there in Ontario building without being licensed to build by Tarion and now HCRA? And why are they not enrolling their projects with Tarion? These regulatory bodies are asleep at the switch. That's why the train crash in slow motion is being allowed to happen. And in the work that I do as an independent consumer advocate, I don't get paid by anybody. I do this because I believe that there's a big problem here. And who else is speaking up for the consumer? Do we let government do that and just not inform them about problems in the marketplace? This has to be brought to the attention of our MPPs and our legislators, and it's urgent, it's important, and they're not going to sell all these 1.5 million homes in 10 years. They're not going to reach their targets if consumers don't believe that the system in place is there to protect them. But, they don't want to listen to me. They want to listen to the builder lobbyists. Thankfully, you're listening to me, and we'll pass this on to consumers, and you might just save somebody from making a huge mistake.
Yeah, trust me, I know the feeling. So I suppose my last question is, we have these projects being canceled. We have builder corporations going bankrupt. Many of them weren't even registered with Tarion to begin with. And we have a lot of buyers out there who are not going to have their deposit fully covered by Tarion. So, without those deposits being held in trust anywhere, do these buyers have any recourse?
Well, no, except if you've got a lot of money and a lot of time, you can try to sue the builder in court. But nobody I've ever met has the money to pay lawyers $800 an hour or $600 an hour and to wait through a long, complex court procedure for 3 years or 4 or more. And at the end of the day, you don't have your house either. So the courts are not the solution. The courts are not the solution for most consumer protection problems because consumers don't have money. Builders do, government does, but the people who need to be protected cannot use the court system because of its high cost and its complex and lengthy procedures. It's just not an option. So there is some hope, I think, for condo purchasers because although Tarion only protects 20,000 of their deposit, if the builder wants to ask for more in a deposit, he has to get that insured through some kind of complicated process outside of Tarion, I believe. So there may be some hope for condo purchasers. And condo purchasers have a number of other protections that freehold purchasers do not have because they have the Condo Act, which was brought in several years ago. But there again, why discriminate against buyers because of the type of ownership they choose? Freehold home buyers should have just as much protection as condo buyers and vice versa. The government really has been dragging its feet on this for so many years. I just run out of words to keep saying it, but we have to keep their feet to the fire. This is a political problem. This is a problem that goes squarely on the shoulders of our legislative assembly in Queen's Park.
Okay, well, I think that's all the time we have for today, but thank you very much for coming, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much for the opportunity and look forward to talking again. Thanks a lot.